Vallabha Jaya Giri Varadari Jaya Giri Varadari Jaya Yashodhanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jashodhanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodhanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jashodhanandana Jaya Braja Jaya Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamunatira Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Jaya Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Hari Jaya Giri Varadari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varadari Jaya Giri Varadari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Kalachanji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Krishna, dear devotees, thank you all so much for being here. So we'll start off with our invocation prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And read the translation together. O my Lord, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. And these verses we can chant together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Hare Krishna. So just to kind of catch us up to where we're at right now, do a little brief summary of what we've read so far and discussed during this chapter. So this chapter describes King Chitraketu's lamentation over the death of his son and the teachings of the great sage Angira and Narada Muni. When the king, deeply attached to his son, is overwhelmed by grief, the sages approach him with transcendental knowledge. They explain the impermanent nature of the material world and how the soul, distinct from the body, undergoes transmigration. To remove Chitraketu's lamentation, they revive the dead child, who then speaks profound truths to the father about the nature of the self, revealing that he has had many parents in different lifetimes. This shocks the king and queen, helping them realize the futility of material attachment. Narada Muni then instructs Chitraketu in devotional service and gives him these prayers for the Lord, which he chanted for 1 week and fasted on water only, continuously chanting with great care and attention the mantras given by Narada Muni. And I was as I was preparing for the class, I listened to a nice class by Bhaktivinoda Swami on the same verse, and he made such a nice point that King Chitraketu, even after having millions of wives and trying for so long to have a child, finally has a son, and then his son is killed. And so, many people in this circumstance would say, "Oh, Krishna's like out to get me," or "God is evil," and just stop practicing any spiritual practice and go away from the Lord. But he didn't do that. And even when his son came and in essence kind of chastised his father, he didn't say, "Oh, I'm your father. Why are you speaking to me like this? I'm the king. Get out of here." He accepted what was said to him. And you can see what happened. Instead of trying to dismiss the Lord, and he accepted what happened to him, and he accepted his situation, and then Narada Muni was able to come and instruct him, and he was able to pray to the Lord like this. And so where we're at now is the Lord has appeared to King Chitraketu, and he became so moved with love for the Lord that tears moistened the resting place of the Lord's lotus feet, and he was unable to even utter a letter. He completely forgot how to speak. He was so choked up with love for the Lord. And what we're going to read now are King Chitraketu's first words expressing his feelings for the Lord. So if we have a mic, we can start reading text 34.
Chitraketu said, "O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of their mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees."
I really appreciated this. After he couldn't speak, had nothing to say, he describes the Lord as being unconquerable, and then immediately he says, but actually for those devotees who have control over their minds and senses, they can keep you under their control out of your causeless mercy. Just really appreciated.
My dear Lord, this cosmic manifestation and its creation, maintenance, and annihilation are all but your opulences. Since Lord Brahma and the other creators are nothing but small portions of a portion of you, their partial power to create does not make them God or Ishvara. Their consciousness of themselves as separate lords is therefore merely false prestige. It is not valid.
You exist in the beginning, middle, and end of everything, from the most minute particle of the cosmic manifestation, the atom, to the gigantic universes and total material energy. Nonetheless, you are eternal, having no beginning, end, or middle. You are perceived to exist in these three phases, and thus you are permanent. When the cosmic manifestation does not exist, you exist as the original potency.
Every universe is covered by 7 layers: earth, water, fire, air, sky, the total energy, and false ego, each 10 times greater than the previous one. There are innumerable universes besides this one, and although they are unlimitedly large, they move about like atoms in you. Therefore, you are called unlimited, Ananta.
This is really striking to me. The innumerable universes that are unlimitedly large are moving around within the Lord like tiny atoms. And it reminds me of the Prabhupada memories. Tamal Krishna Maharaj shares a pastime with Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was kind of illustrating a point with him and chastising him basically in so many ways. And so Srila Prabhupada talks about how large the creation is. And then he says, and on one street in Los Angeles, there's this one Tamal Krishna, I guess Prabhu at the time, he wasn't a sannyasi, who thinks, so much of himself. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, and I felt like tiny. And I was just thinking about this, how tiny we all really are. These unlimitedly huge universes are floating around in the body of the Lord like tiny atoms. Then how, where does that even put us in the picture of that? We're so tiny, actually. And yet at the same time, the Lord wants our love. And he values each and every one of us. So it's like at the same time we're so tiny, but also we're significant in relation to the Lord. And the Lord still wants each and every one of our individual offerings of love to Him. Please continue.
O Lord, O Supreme, unintelligent persons who thirst for sense enjoyment and who worship various demigods are no better than animals in the human form of life. Because of their animalistic propensities, they fail to worship your lordship, and instead they worship the insignificant demigods who are but small sparks of your glory. With the destruction of the entire universe, including the demigods, the benedictions received from demigods also vanish, just like the nobility when a king is no longer in power.
Supreme Lord, okay, thank you. O Supreme Lord, if persons obsessed with material desires for sense gratification through material opulence worship you, who are the source of all knowledge and transcendental to material qualities, they are not subject to material rebirth, just as sterilized or fried seeds do not produce plants. Living entities are subjected to the repetition of birth and death because they are conditioned by material nature. But since you are transcendental, one who is inclined to associate with you in transcendence escapes the conditions of material nature.
Text 40. O unconquerable one, when you spoke about Bhagavat Dharma, which is the uncontaminated religious system for achieving the shelter of your lotus feet, that was your victory. Persons who have no material desires, like the Kumaras, who are self-satisfied sages, worship you to be liberated from material contamination. In other words, they accept the process of Bhagavat Dharma to achieve shelter at your lotus feet.
Being full of contradiction, all forms of religion but Bhagavata Dharma work under conception of fruitive results and distinctions of you and I, and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna's is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic power. But such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary. Because they are full of envy, they are full of religion.
They're all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna is theirs. Such a beautiful, yeah, how wonderful that is, how wonderful that will be. Become fully Krishna conscious, and all we think of is that, Krishna, I'm yours, and you are mine.
How can a religious system that produces envy of oneself and of others be beneficial for oneself and for them? What is auspicious about following such a system? What is actually to be gained? By causing pain to one's own self due to self-envy, and by causing pain to others, one arouses your anger and practices irreligion.
Yeah, there's such a, we see this so much in the world, right? To the point of where now many young people want nothing to do with religion. Completely, they're just like disenchanted and want nothing to do with it. And it just illustrated so clearly that if a religious system is producing envy of oneself and others, so in other words, it's creating fights, quarrels, and arguments, and we see religious wars and so many things that happen. And it was, making me think of how Srila Prabhupada spoke about, we're a non-sectarian tradition, that anybody can actually chant an authorized name of God like that and practice in that way. And so it's not, Sanatana Dharma is our original constitutional position as servants of the Lord. It's not about these designations of being an American and having to practice in this specific way, but the ultimate goal of connecting with the Lord, chanting the Lord's holy names, serving the Lord, serving his devotees like that. Just was really appreciating how clear this is. How can a religious system that produces envy of oneself and others be beneficial for oneself and others? It's just so clear. but it's what we experience so much in the world.
My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non-moving, and not considering high and low, are called Aryans. Such Aryan worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
My Lord, it is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Not to speak of seeing you personally, merely by hearing the holy name of your Lordship only once. Even Chandals, men of the lowest class, are freed from all material contamination. Under the circumstances, who will not be freed from material contamination simply by seeing you?
The mercy of the Lord, even by merely hearing the holy name of your Lordship only once, even the lowest class of mankind are freed from all material contamination.
Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni.
This is our mood, right? We give all credit to our spiritual masters for what they have done and how they've connected us with the Lord, and because of their mercy we have the opportunity to try to serve the Lord and serve the devotees.
O unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead.
If you hold it from the top of the mic, the bottom is where the receiver is. It should be a little better.
O limited Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever a living entity does in this material world is well known to you, because you are the Supersoul. In the presence of the sun, there is nothing to be revealed by the light of a glowworm. Similarly, because you know everything, in your presence, there is nothing for me to make known.
Srila Prabhupada's analogies are so great. In the presence of the sun, there is nothing to be revealed by the light of the glowworm. It's just so clear. So clear.
My dear Lord, you are the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of the cosmic manifestation. But persons who are too materialistic and who always see separateness do not have eyes with which to see you. They cannot understand your real position, and therefore they conclude that the cosmic manifestation is independent of your opulence. My Lord, you are the supreme pure, and you are full in all 6 opulences. Therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Musical mic.
My dear Lord, it is after you endeavor that Lord Brahma, Indra, and other directors of the cosmic manifestation become occupied with their activities. It is after you perceive the material energy, my Lord, that the senses begin to perceive. The Supreme Personality of Godhead holds all the universes on his heads like seeds of mustard. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, that Supreme Personality, who has thousands of hoods.
Thank you so much. So now we'll return to text 34, our focus verse. And before starting, I just want to take a moment to ask you all for your blessings so that I may say something for all of our benefit. So we can go back to text 34. Perfect. Okay. Dravida Prabhu gave a class in this section of the Bhagavatam, and he said that all of the verses are actually a little bit irregular, or a lot of the verses are irregular in the meter. And he made the point that, it mentions that King Chitraketu was choked up and couldn't even speak. So maybe that's where the irregularity in the meter of the verses comes from. So we'll do our best to see if I can remember it. Chitraketuruvacha Ajita Jita Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitatmabhir Bhavata Vijitaste Picha Bhajatam Akamatmanam Ya Atmadoti Karuna Chitraketuruvacha Ajita Jita Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitatmabhir Bhavata Vijitaste Picha Bhajatam Akamatmanam Ya Atmadoti Karuna. Please chant. Chitraketuruvacha Jita Jita Samamativi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitatmabhir Bhavata Vijitaste Picha Bhajatam Chitraketuruvacha Ajita Jita Samamativi Vijitaste Picha Bhajatam Chitraketuruvacha Ajita Jita Samamativi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitatmabhir Bhavata Vijitaste Picha Bhajatam Akamatmanam Yatmadoti Karuna Harivo. And Advaita, you make me feel brave because you chant the verse so nicely every day. Thank you. Okay, we'll do the word for word together. Chitraketu Vacha, King Chitraketu said, Ajita, O my unconquerable Lord, Chita, conquered, Samamatibi, by persons who have conquered the mind, Sadhubi, the devotees, Bhavan, your lordship, Jita Atmabi, who have completely controlled the senses, Bhavata, by you, Vijata, conquered, Te, they, Api, also, Cha, and, Bhajatam, to those who always engage in your service, Akama Atmanam, with no motives for material profit, Ya, who, Atmada, giving yourself, Ati Karuna, extremely merciful. Translation. Chitraketu said, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Rupa Ki Jai. Chitraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. In this purport, Srila Prabhupada references many nice verses, and we'll dive into those quite a bit as we read through the purport. Purport. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. The gopis conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopis. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopis, and without seeing the gopis, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as Gyanis and Yogis, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. Pure devotees are described as samamati, which means that they never deviate from devotional service under any circumstances. It is not that devotees worship the Supreme Lord only when happy. They worship him even in distress. Happiness and distress do not hamper the process of devotional service. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotional service is ahetuki apratiyata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. So ahetuki apratiyata is from Srimad Bhagavatam 1-2-6, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 6. And the verse is Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radoksaje ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. The translation is the supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. And in the purport for this verse, in this statement, Sri Suta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people, or the people in general, might easily take it up. And as I read this, I was struck by the compassion of the sages of Naimisharanya. They knew how things would progressively decline in this age of Kali, and they asked for this summary for everyone's benefit. So we'll continue the purport. When a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, anya bilasita sunyam, his service cannot be hampered by any material condition, apratihata. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so anya bilasita sunyam, which all of you are well aware, is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1:1-11. And the verse is anya bilasita sunyam jnana karma dhyana avritam anukul yena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. And Srila Prabhupada explains that this is the first statement of bhakti given by Srila Rupa Goswami. The first class devotional service, this is Srila Prabhupada speaking, the first class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably, not unfavorably. Anukula pratikula anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyam vivarjanam. Bhakti means we should simply accept what is favorable to Krishna, and what is not favorable to Krishna, that we shall not accept. This reminded me of, in our class yesterday, in our discussion, Prabhupada Priyaprabhu made the point, she brought up this during our discussion at the end of class regarding accepting what is favorable to our Krishna consciousness and not accepting what is not favorable. And I found this to be so direct and refreshing. What Prabhupada says, bhakti means we should simply accept what is favorable to Krishna, and what is not favorable to Krishna, that we shall not accept. It's quite simple, actually. If we have those that can help us to distinguish between what is favorable and not favorable, and we have good association like that, then it's quite simple. We just have to accept what is favorable to our Krishna consciousness and to Krishna, and what is not favorable, that we don't accept. Okay, we can continue the purport. A special distinction between devotees and the other transcendentalists, namely the Gyanis and Yogis, is that Gyanis and Yogis artificially try to become one with the Supreme, whereas devotees never aspire for such an impossible accomplishment. Devotees know that their position is to be eternally. Would somebody else like to continue reading?
A special distinction between devotees. Sorry, is that where we? Devotees know that their position is to be eternally servants of the Supreme Lord and never to be one with Him. Therefore, they are called samamati or jitatma. They detest oneness with the Supreme. They have no lusty desires for oneness. Instead, their desire is to be freed from all material hankering. Therefore, they are called nishkama, desireless. A living entity cannot exist without desires, but desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, lusty desires. Kamaistaiste jnana. Because of lusty desires, non-devotees are deprived of their intelligence. Thus, they are unable to conquer the Supreme Lord, whereas devotees, being freed from such unreasonable desires, can conquer the Lord. Such devotees are also conquered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they are pure, being free from all material desires, they fully surrender to the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Lord conquers them. Such devotees never aspire for liberation. They simply desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Because they serve the Lord without desires for remuneration, they can conquer the mercy of the Lord. The Lord is by nature very merciful, and when He sees that His servant is working without desires for material profit, naturally he is conquered.
Devotees are always engaged in service. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanuvarne. So this verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18 through 20, and this is when Ambarish Maharaj was offended by Durvasa Muni. And the translation of this verse is so nice. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged, it's 3 long verses, so it's quite a long translation, but it's just really nice. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. His words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service and various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. And I just really appreciated how practical and simple this explanation was of how to engage everything, all of our senses. You know, and Srila Prabhupada really gave it to us with the morning program, right? We get to do so many of these things. We come and we see the Lord. We take Tulsi Maharani when we have our Charnamrita. We're hugging the devotees that we're so happy to see, and so many of these things. And it's so practical. It's not something that's so far out that you can't conceive of how to do. Come to the temple, see the Lord, engage your legs in walking to the temple, and then like that, everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. So this is the final paragraph of the purport, and then we'll open up for some questions and more discussion, I'm hoping, rather than questions from the audience. Final paragraph is, all the activities of their senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Because of such devotion, the Lord gives Himself to His devotees as if they could use Him for any purpose they might desire. Yeah, right? Of course, devotees have no purpose other than to serve. When a devotee fully surrenders and has no aspiration for material profit, The Lord certainly gives him all opportunities for service. This is the position of the Lord when conquered by his devotees. And Bhaktivinoda Maharaj, he made the point that, it's not like you can kind of think, okay, yeah, I'll conquer the Lord and then I'll be able to use the Lord in my service. It doesn't work that way. You miss the target. If you have any tinge of that, then you never conquer the Lord. And I was just really appreciating how I found in the purport that these prayers of King Chitraketu, that they were just so personal and touching, how the Lord gives himself to the devotee that is free from material desires. And the devotee gives himself freely to the Lord with no desire for material profit. And the Lord in turn empowers the devotee and gives him all opportunities and facilities to serve the Lord and the devotees. Just this beautiful reciprocal relationship was really nice. So I'll just highlight a few points, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So in the verse, we heard that King Chitraketu, he was glorifying the Supreme Lord, acknowledging that although he is unconquerable, he is controlled by pure devotees who have subdued their minds and senses. Because of his causeless mercy, the Lord surrenders himself to devotees to serve him without material motives. And some key points: the mutual conquering of the Lord and the devotees. The Lord is conquered by his devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. This relationship brings transcendental bliss. And the wonderful example was given of the gopis, how they conquered Krishna, and that Krishna was unable to be happy without them because he was conquered by their love. And pure devotional service, pure devotees never deviate from devotional service, regardless of the circumstances. Whether we're happy or in distress, we're always serving the Lord. And their devotion is a haituki apratiyata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. So there's no ulterior motive, and it never stops. Unlike the jnanis and yogis who seek impersonal liberation, devotees seek only service to Krishna. And then freedom from material desires. Devotees do not aspire for oneness with God, but remain eternal servants. And our lusty desires, and it was very interesting how it was defined, that these are desires that can never be fulfilled. And so I was thinking that it makes sense actually, right? Because if somehow or another we could actually fulfill our desires in the material world, then it would be as if we're in the right place. If we're able to fulfill our desires, right, it would be like we're a fish in water. But because we're a fish out of water, naturally, whatever desires we have here are not going to be fulfilled. And then ultimately, the hope and the prayer is that it then leads us to serving Krishna ultimately and going back to Krishna. Because we see we can't fulfill our desires here. So lusty desires that can never be fulfilled distract non-devotees, preventing them from conquering the Lord. And because devotees have no material motives, Krishna willingly gives himself to them. And then lastly, total surrender and Krishna's mercy. Devotees fully engage all their senses in Krishna's service. Savai mana Krishna padar vindayor. And Krishna is naturally merciful, but he becomes especially conquered by a devotee who serves without personal motives. When a devotee desires nothing but service, Krishna grants unlimited opportunities for devotional service. Thank you all so much. I'm a little bit over time, so open it up for any comments, discussions, questions. I may pass back to you all to answer, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Nrsimha Rupa Prabhu. I was remembering this incredible section in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which describes the result of following Srila Prabhupada's purport. If we develop this type of pure, unmotivated love and conquer Krishna, then this is what it looks like. And this section is so profound that when I first heard it, it struck my mind, and I've never forgotten it. So I probably heard it in the first year or so of learning about Krishna consciousness. And it talks about the reciprocal love between Krishna and the gopis. This is a few of the verses there. This is in the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj says that when Lord Krishna sees the gopis, his joy increases and his unparalleled sweetness increases also. The gopis think, Krishna has obtained so much pleasure by seeing me. That thought increases the fullness and beauty of their faces and bodies. And then the beauty of Lord Krishna increases at the sight of the beauty of the gopis. And the more the gopis see Lord Krishna's beauty, the more their beauty increases. In this way, a competition takes place between them in which no one acknowledges defeat. And then Krishna, however, derives pleasure from the beauty and good qualities of the gopis. And when the gopis see his pleasure, the joy of the gopis increases. Last one. Of course, there's much more, but this section I'm thinking. Therefore, we find that the joy of the gopis nourishes the joy of Lord Krishna. For that reason, the fault of lust is not present in their love. It's inconceivable. This is what pure love in the spiritual world looks like. It's just ever-increasing beauty and sweetness and happiness and selflessness. That is our birthright. We just somehow need to hear about this and get so excited that we can't help but want to go back.
The more I hear about these types of pastimes, like, you know, when you hear about the parrots, you know, arguing about who's better, Radha or Krishna, you know, and you hear about what it's like actually in the spiritual world. And it really, you know, the analogy of, you know, broken glass and chewing the chewed becomes so clear that, you know, even the, you know, sometimes if you're in Vrindavan and the parrots are really making a ruckus, it can be a little disturbing. You know, it's like you can't even like, because it becomes quite loud. But I was, you know, and so that's our reflection of the, but in the spiritual world, you're hearing them praising Radha and Krishna, and the cowherd boys and the gopis became so pleased by hearing the parrots arguing over who was better that then they, I can't remember, it was like one of them threw a field full of pomegranate seeds for the male parrots, and then the others threw a bunch of another fruit, I can't remember the name, for the female, like the gopis were feeding the female parrots and the gopas were feeding the male parrots because they were so pleased. And just how everything is so wonderful. And how, you know, it makes me reflect and think about, like, what am I holding on to in this material world? What is it that's so wonderful and so amazing and so fulfilling and fills me up with so much love, and I feel so completely satisfied that I'm holding on because there's something so great that's going to make me happy. I mean, I've been trying for 42 years and it hasn't happened. And the more I tried, the worse I felt and the worse it was. So it's so nice to hear these. It also reminded me of Bhaktivinoda Maharaj when he was giving class. He was illustrating this point of the love of the gopis for Krishna, and how, you know, the point of how it's completely unmotivated, and that the gopis were willing to, you know, Radharani was, even if the Lord's activities were giving her some kind of pain, but he was happy, she was happy. She was okay, even if Krishna went with Chandravali or did some of these other things, because she saw that Krishna was happy, that was okay for her. Just like the, you know, the pastime of Krishna having a headache and asking for the dust of the feet of the brahmanas, and they say, no, we can't do that. We'll go to hell for millions of years. And the gopis were just, oh, of course, take as much as you need. If it relieves his headache even for a moment, we're happy to spend countless lifetimes. Yeah. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of along similar lines in relation to this point here that struck me, that, where is it? Prabhupada says about the devotees, he said they have no lusty desires for oneness. It was just interesting how he said that the desire for oneness, to become one with God, was a lusty desire. Because, you know, these jnanis who are seeking after liberation, it's kind of like a high goal, you know, to be free from repeated birth and death, to become one with the Lord. And it is a kind of liberation. But then Prabhupada says that kama, or where is it? desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, lusty desires.
Yeah.
So it's not only our material desires that are lusty desires that can never be fulfilled, but even the desire to become one with God is also a lusty desire that can never be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because we're not one with God. We're separate individuals who have a relationship, and the oneness nullifies our potential to have a loving relationship with Him, which is who we are, which is what we exist for.
Yeah.
So, I was just thinking that we're so foolish, and that's what he says. He quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita, Kamais tais tarhutyajnana, that our intelligence is just stolen. We're just like, no brain. It's just like the brain's gone, because we're continually chasing after, the fulfillment of desires that can never be fulfilled. It's it's doomed. The whole endeavor is doomed to absolute frustration and misery. And yet we keep hitting our head against this hard wall, and we're just getting bloody and concussions, in this material world. So instead, let's pursue those desires that can be fulfilled. Yeah. And like you were just describing, that how beautiful it is, to be with Krishna, to be in that scenario where we're seeing how Krishna's beauty is increasing, his sweetness is increasing, and reciprocation with the gopis' beauty increasing and their sweetness increasing, and we're actually belong there. We're meant to be there. That's what we should be desiring, and that desire can be fulfilled. That's the one desire that can actually be fulfilled, is to have a pure, devotional, loving relationship with Radha and Krishna and all their associates in the spiritual world. Yeah. Why would you want anything else? Why would you chase something else that is nowhere close to as wonderful and can't be fulfilled anyway, when you could get the highest, most ecstatic, unlimitedly blissful situation, and it's actually, in this age of Kali, it's not difficult to fulfill by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. We just need to follow this simple process, and we can make it.
Thank you. Such wonderful points. I'm appreciating the expansion of the idea of lust and kama. That it's not just some desire for something that I want to possess or something like that, but actually even becoming one with the Lord, because it's a desire that can't be fulfilled. Such a nice point. And I was appreciating how I believe Prabhupada said something to the effect of, the proof is in the tasting. And in other words, try something, try this process. And I was appreciating how we have these descriptions of the spiritual world to, give us something to kind of strive for when we all of our desires are frustrated and material world, that we have this amazing, but at the same time that we can practice and taste it here. We can experience it here. We can try it and see that, I've tried in so many other ways to make myself happy. I've tried in so many other ways to satisfy my senses. And it's been over and over again. It's been nothing but suffering, and it hasn't worked. But even just right now, I was so much appreciating what you were sharing and what Mother Prabhupada Priya was sharing. It's so relishable. It's so enjoyable to even, to be in the association of devotees and to speak about Krishna together and to sit and chant and to honor prasad. And, we have the ability, how merciful Krishna is, to let us practice here and ultimately experience, some taste for what we can actually achieve by purely serving the Lord and the devotees and practicing Krishna consciousness. So thank you so much for your wonderful points. I think we're at time, but if there's one last comment or question, we can.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm thinking that a common question which comes up is that, okay, yes, you say this process is so wonderful, and even now you can taste it, but I'm trying, and it's a real grind. It's really difficult, actually, on a day-to-day basis. I'm not feeling it. So can you give some encouragement for when we're feeling in those states?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is true. I mean, at the same time, we know that for devotees that our, the karma from our past activities and the conditioning that we have is actually reduced, when we experience, whether it's an accident or some kind of setback in our spiritual practice, that it's been minimize, but at the same time, it can still be very difficult. I struggle myself, so I can relate to this question very much. And I think for me, what I see is that when I wasn't, when I went through my rebellious years in my life, and I, in essence, tried to find enjoyment outside of Krishna consciousness, I became, I was the most miserable I've ever been in my life. I was quite depressed, and I felt, and if I didn't have this to come back to, I don't know where I would have gone. And so, yes, even practicing Krishna consciousness, there are difficulties, but at least in my personal experience, I found those difficulties to be so much greater and so much more insurmountable, because I didn't have something to come back to when I ran up against that, you try something, you're not satisfied. Oh, but let me try that something, and I'm not satisfied. And then another thing, and then another, and then another, and you can go on and on and on for lifetimes, which we have done, and be unsatisfied. But because I had somewhere to go at that point, I wasn't lost, and I wasn't stuck there. So as much as, yes, we still have our conditioning from countless lifetimes, so like the analogies used so much, I think it was used even just a day or two ago of, the fan, you flip the switch off and the electricity is no longer going there, but the fan still keeps going for some time. And so like that, we've practiced, Prabhupada said, you chant the holy name one time, and it was even in one of the translations we read today, actually. Just coming in contact with the Lord once, your spiritual life has begun, and your destination is assured. And at the same time, because we're in this material world, it takes time to go through. It takes time. We're in the shower, so to speak, trying to cleanse ourselves of countless lifetimes of conditioning. But I think what gives me hope is those glimmers, that mercy that comes sometimes when you chant and you feel some reciprocation from the Lord, and when you associate with devotees and you feel so happy, and you feel, for me, the first time in my life, the only times in my life I've ever actually really felt happy and satisfied was in Krishna consciousness. And so yes, it's not going to be easy, but in the big picture of things, it's actually quite a small amount of time, really. When you look at it in the grand scheme of things, in the life of Brahma, and one inhalation and exhalation of Mahavishnu, and you take that back to the spiritual world, it feels like a long time. And not to dismiss the difficulties and the struggles that come up, but at the same time, to take solace and inspiration and hope from that little mercy that comes from practicing Krishna consciousness, and that taste that we get, and seeing that it's only a matter of time. We've started our journey back, so just kind of hold on for the ride. And from my experience is that it actually gets easier over time. It doesn't become harder. There still will be challenges. It's not that it's until we're completely liberated and back with the Lord, but that it becomes easier. The mind becomes more peaceful, the senses less agitated over time. Yeah, just some thoughts. I would love to hear, you all have been practicing for so long. Any Ratnagopi Prabhu?
So I haven't been practicing for so long. However, I do feel that one of the most important things in life is to have integrity and be trustworthy. That's what helps make you a good person. And when you learn to push through and still do perform devotional service in distress, as these verses are talking about, you become a person who runs based on your values, and you become a better person, someone more trustworthy. So when you can push through these darker times of cleaning in the mud, so to speak, where sometimes you don't feel so great, you push through, you become better for it in all ways. And then also we can temporarily dig through the mud for that eternal happiness, or we can run away from it for more suffering. So it's kind of like temporary cleaning, and then you're done.
Very nice. Thank you. Jai Gopika Prabhu.
While she's getting the microphone, I was feeling a little self-conscious speaking today because she usually speaks on Friday.
No.
She gives such wonderful classes.
Krishna. No, I was just going to say, can we please have you here more often? I
But you
don't think
usually-
I've heard you speak since...
You usually give class on Friday.
It is Friday, yeah, so I alternate on Fridays, Prabhu.
On Mondays. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Prabhu, thanks for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
But I just wanted to share something. You made me remember my spiritual master said this, His Holiness Radha Swami, that if we are engaging in, Krishna consciousness and we're not feeling happy, it's because we're not engaged in service and because we're not engaging others in Krishna's service. And it was really the second one that he emphasized. And then that made me think about, yeah, I can do service, but when I'm explaining, something to someone else, or I'm explaining what I read or heard to someone else, it's just so much more joyful than me doing it on my own.
It's wonderful. Sharing Krishna with others. It reminded me of, it's connected in some ways, but a little different. But Giraj Maharaj, when he was giving initiations here in Dallas, maybe 2 years ago, the purport, I can't remember which verse it is in Srimad Bhagavatam. I shared it with Briham Prabhu, actually. It's in the 3rd canto. It's a really nice purport where it goes through all of the 10 offenses, the chanting. And then at the end it says that if we're chanting and we're not experiencing some happiness, something from our chanting, that it's because we're chanting with offenses. And then it gives a really nice remedy of if you're, the remedy to chanting offensively is to take shelter of Lord Chaitanya. And I found that to be so nice. Just a kind of a very practical solution for us, that if we're not experiencing something when we're chanting, then that means there's some kind of offenses that are there. And so just in that moment, we can always just take shelter of Lord Chaitanya like that practically. It's a nice little, thank you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai. Thank you all so much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.